Hello, welcome everyone to our live stream. We have with us today Stacia Langley, who is Max Benson's mom, and she's also on the board of NeuroClastic. And we have Kate Jones, who you know already as our Chief Communications Officer, and Jude, who is our Chief Decolonizing Officer. And we have a lot to talk about today. And we hope that you will put your questions and comments in the chat. We see that we have some spammers. I'm trying to manage that. Our other mods are currently not online, and so I'm trying to do the stream and manage the bots that are filling the chat. So please don't click those links. I'm blocking them as fast as I can. But yeah, those are, if it doesn't come from NeuroClastic, don't click the links because that's spammers.
It's not us. It's not us.
Yes. So, Stacia, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for having me.
For anyone listening who does not know, Stacia's son was held in an unlawful prone restraint for nearly 2 hours in 2018 and was killed by his teachers. And this is going to be a difficult conversation for all of us, so please be patient with us because it's, for obvious reasons, very hard to talk about. And Stacy and I are very close, and this is very personal to me too. We have some special guests coming, and we have a few who ran into last minute things and can't come today, but we will be speaking with Oscar award-winning writer, comedian, and actor Trayvon Free, and Zaria, who is starred in the Oscar-winning film that Trayvon wrote, Two Distant Strangers, and she's also in Pretty Little Liars, Original Sin. And so, yeah. Stacia, this is the first time that you've really gone live. How you doing?
How you doing? Okay, I'm all right. This year has been a little bit better. I'm a little more functional and able to do things like this. So I'm glad to be here to represent Max, who loved the cameras and the action. Ironically, he would have loved this very much as I hate it, I think. So I'm here to talk for him.
And Max wanted to be famous. And so this is, we hope that you will help us in the audience to make sure that Max's story stays alive. Got a lot of support coming in, a lot of spammers showing up, so sorry about that again in the comments. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the media a little bit because we feel that this is the media plays a huge part, not just in this specific case, but in all of the cases where someone experiences extreme injustice, especially if it ends in loss of life, that the media portrays things in ways that cause the court of public opinion to start with a bunch of biases. Stacia, can you tell us a little bit about how things played out in the media?
I was not, I don't know if I'm the right person to speak to that, because I really was not functional for the first 2 years. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. I know that when the first, I think that the media heard perhaps from the school that my son was like very big and a teenager, and sort of casting him very differently than what he actually was. He was 5'3", and he had just turned 13. But certainly, I think when I turned off from the media, I was watching the comments on a news story about what had happened, and there were many people saying, the poor teacher, this giant teenager was probably doing the wrong thing, and I was furiously trying to just type in, no, that's not who he was. So I think I don't know what the media was really saying after that. But I know there is a lot of people want to think that the kid probably had it coming, because I think like it's too scary to think of what if just like a little kid like Max can, they want to control it somehow and make it his fault, because I think that's more understandable to people than what actually happened.
Yeah, the media, they said that Max was over a foot taller than he actually was, and they gave him 50 pounds. They said that he had, quote, severe autism, which is something that we never say in the autistic community, but they painted this picture of someone less than human, someone that was giant, and it made it seem like the teachers were just being victimized. But and so the first few days that things afterwards, the first few things that were on the news were really ridiculous, absurd, and completely dehumanizing. Generic. They had nothing about who Max actually was, or anything that showed the human side of him. They made it seem like I don't know, Juggernaut was loose in the classroom, and Max might actually think that Juggernaut is cool, but not the way they did that. But can you tell us a little bit about what Max was like?
He was he was so full of fun and life. It's hard to talk about. It's still hard for me to talk about. I'm sorry. He was hilarious. He was outgoing and very verbal, and more verbal than I am. He was the most honest person I know. And he was just somebody that required you to be present at all times, and he was such a good teacher that way for me. He was just a cool dude. That's what he would want me to say. And he was just fun, and losing him was, everybody, nobody, I don't want to use the term light because that's overused when people die, especially kids. So I'm trying to find a different word, but that's the only one that I can come up with, because he was just so full of light and love and energy. And I mean, it's so hard to, honestly, he's starting to slip. This is the period of time where you start losing your really sort of visceral memories. And so I'm like trying to access it, but it's getting hard. But he was really cool.
So, Max was known by his neighbors, the whole neighborhood, as the mayor, because he just knew everyone. And we have your friend Jennifer in the audience. She said he was silly and all about justice in the world. And that is a really autistic thing. Yeah, Max was hilarious, and we have a video. If you go back and look at some of NeuroClastic's articles about Max, we have a video of him wearing his bad guy pants, and that was bad guy pants. In the video shows Max in the living room at home just dancing and being hilarious, and you can hear Stacia laughing until she can't breathe in the background. And we had a couple years ago when we held a vigil in 2018, bad guy pants became a hashtag. And when you go to fight against injustice and you are dismantling these harmful systems and you are making sure that people get to see the humanity of people who are dehumanized for whatever reason, the world needs to be reminded that we're fully human. You put on your bad guy pants, and Stacia is currently wearing her bad guy pants. And Trayvon, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, welcome to the stream.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming. Are we, we're waiting too for Zaria.
Yeah, I think she's coming or trying to get on.
Yeah, that's fine. We can hang out and wait for her. But so excited. I got to be honest, I'm nervous right now because you are amazing. And Jude, do you want to go ahead and introduce Trayvon and Zaria?
Yeah, sure. We are very honored to have you both on the stream. Our special guests today are Trayvon Free. Trayvon is an Oscar and Emmy award-winning writer and actor and comedian. He's written for many shows, including The Daily Show and Jon Stewart and Trevor Noah. He wrote and co-directed Two Distant Strangers, which won the Academy Award for the Best Live Action Short Film in 2021. So if y'all haven't seen it, please get on that immediately, like right after this is done. After, like, if you're emotionally there already, I may not be, but I have seen it. We will also have celebrity actor and activist Zaria, who has starred in Free's Oscar-winning short Two Distant Strangers. She also has starred in Pretty Little Liars, Original Sin. And here, speaking of, are your ears burning? We were just talking about you. Thank you. So yeah, Zaria, you have starred in Pretty Little Liars, Original Sin, and you've also had roles in Blackish and Dad, Stop Embarrassing Me. And thank you for joining us as we talk about the institutional risks faced by autistic children and adults by educators, police, and the media, and as we learn how we can all work together to ensure that we keep our children safe and all of us safe.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so nervous. Thank you so much. I'm Tara, and we've interacted by proxy already, and I'll let Kate. You just met Jude. Jude is their chief decolonizing officer at NeuroClastic, and I'll let Kate and Stacia introduce themselves if they want.
Stacia, you go.
Oh, I think you're muted. Yes.
Stacia Langley. I'm the mother of Max Benson, who died in a prone restraint several years ago at a non-public school in California.
Stacey's also on the board of NeuroClastic. I'm Kate Jones. I'm the Chief Communications Officer.
Nice to meet you. I'm Zaria. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And it's so nice to meet you, Stacia. I'm so sorry.
Likewise, very sorry.
So,
I'm so sorry. I just also want to commend you for your bravery. It's such a brave thing that you're doing. And I just want you to know that I see that.
So I want to talk for a second about Two Distant Strangers. Zaria, you are one of the main characters and the absolute most lovable character, just so witty and hilarious and smart, and just immediately I don't know that I've ever fallen so much in love with characters as your character, Perry, and Carter, the protagonist. And I fainted the first time that I tried to. I've been an activist for 20 some years, and the subject matter is very. It's very personal to me. I've had a lot of personal experiences that made it really powerful, and I want to thank you for putting this into the world because it's so important. Trayvon, can you tell us a little bit about Two Distant Strangers and what inspired you to write that film?
Sure. Two Distant Strangers was, initially born out of a conversation that I had with Zaria about, what we had been going through and what we had been experiencing with the marches and the protests that were happening in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered. And, it was our first time really going outside during the pandemic once everyone started going outside to protest. And after doing it for a few days, we were watching the news and in the kitchen, excuse me, and I said to her, it feels like coming home and like watching the reports of new people being killed by the police over and over feels like the worst version of Groundhog's Day. And as a writer and director and creative person, that kernel kind of stuck with me, and I felt like I could do something. I felt like I could do something with it, but I didn't know what at the time. And then the story kind of started to put itself together in my head, and I just decided, I'm going to write this and see what happens because there's nothing else, for us to do. And during at the time we were at home, and so it was either go out or write something, create something. And so I decided to write it. And over the course of 5 days, I wrote the script and I started showing it to my friends, close friends, and everyone had the same reaction. Like, you need to make this right now. Like, you need to make this. And my directing partner and writing partner, Martin Desmond Rowe, was one of the first people I showed it to, and he was like completely blown away. And we started trying to find ways to make it happen, which was finding money and finding people to help us, bring it to life, especially at a time where everyone was avoiding COVID and trying to, when there was no vaccine in summer of 2020, and we were all deciding to take a risk to tell this story at this particular time, because we all felt something. We all felt connected to that experience and that feeling through what we were seeing.
Thank you for sharing that. Zaria, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your experience and what really what was your connection with it and everything, and what really brought you to want to make this?
Sure. Well, Trayvon's a fantastic writer, so I have to give the credit to him when Tara mentioned how Perry was written. I often am, my manager will attest to this when I get a script. If the female character isn't written smart, I'm like, no, I won't do it. So that was initially a huge source of inspiration for me. And as well as Trayvon was saying, we were watching these terrible events, kind of as a team in a way. I feel America hasn't done in a while, that we all kind of were put in timeout by the quarantine, and we all sat and watched something horrific and decided together that we weren't going to stand for it any longer. And so I think the beauty in what I get to do with my art is I get to express myself and hope that people feel connection to that. And unfortunately, this subject was not something that's a fun thing to connect to, but it's nice when it's recognized and put on a stage. And Trayvon has a funny way of kind of just casually saying something that is like life changing. Like, he really was really casual when he was like, yeah, this is what it's like. And he says stuff like that all the time. So I was just like, huh, yeah, it is, but that's the unfortunate part about it is it's so much part of the fabric. This, what George Floyd had to go through of America, that it didn't feel as groundbreaking of a statement, but it is.
Mm-hmm. And you say, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jude. Sorry.
And you say, unfortunately, that it's not a fun thing, to connect on, but for so many people, to be Black, to be autistic, to be restrained and to lose our lives to it, it's our everyday reality. It's not fun to have to teach our children and to coincide with that, because you are marginalized, that you are considered a threat, but also to understand that because they are autistic, because they have these certain behaviors, because they have things that they cannot control, because they are under an authority that refuses to understand them, to come down to their level and look at them and have this understanding that maybe, let me just talk to you and understand you before that I perceive you as a threat, that in their reality that they're going to go through harm. So it's not, for us, a lot of the times it is where it's not going to be fun. So it's nice to be able to look at these things and understand where everybody else, they want to connect on that fun level. They just want to see, oh, I just want to have that happy fun time. I just want to be able, and let's not to say that I do want to have joy in my liberation. I don't want to forget that I want to be able to laugh, but I don't want people to push us aside because we're not fun. That at the end of the day, that our deaths and our struggle is that it's not connected in a way that's not just laughter, because our deaths and our struggle and our pain and our identity overall with how this world treats us It's not fun. And I really appreciate, and two distant strangers in our reality is in a really messed up Groundhog's Day that honestly is a lot of our reality. I appreciate y'all both bringing that to the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We were talking before you got here about how the media portrayed Max after what happened to him, and they gave him a foot or so on his height and 50 more pounds, and all they said about him was, quote, severely autistic, which, you know, we don't use that label for anyone, but when people who know nothing or very little about autism hear that, they hear less human, not completely human. And yeah, what your movie did, and like I said, I've never felt so much connection to characters so quickly. Just loved those characters. Was brilliant, and that the storytelling show what happens before the tragedy. The very real and human people with wit and personality and joy and, you know, pets. And yeah, I just want to thank you for that. And was
Yeah.
that part of your process? Was that part of the
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it. It's the point was to show people that before you see someone on the news or before you see a video on the internet, that person was living a life. That person was being someone to somebody. That person was probably laughing and having fun and, you know, doing things that we all sometimes take for granted, which is just, you know, hanging out, having fun, falling in love. And then at the drop of a hat, it's all taken away. It's all changed. And it's the reason why, you know, art and films like this should exist is because some people just don't get it. Some people won't get it until they see it presented to them in a way that they can't turn away from or they can't ignore. And so it's easy to ignore someone like Max or his story when you have no connection to it. You don't see the humanity in someone like Max, or you don't see the 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 outstretched love and connection that he has to someone like his mother, to someone like his family. There are people, they are all extensions of Max. They're extensions of his existence and his humaneness, his humanness. And so when you treat someone like that, you don't realize what you're really taking away from the world. You don't realize how many lives you're affecting, and you don't realize that in the same way we were doing something, we were being someone before the incident, the people who caused the trauma go on being someone and doing things, and they don't realize the true impact that they have or what they've done. And so it was important that you saw Carter and Perry like live in a world where they're not, the furthest thing from their minds is that level of pain and that level of trauma. And then for you to see just how quickly it can be washed away. And so that's exactly what the point was. You're absolutely right, Tara.
Tara, you there?
I think she wants me to say something, but my brain is also like, ooh, so many things, emotions.
I'm here, sorry.
I'm also just thinking about just like so much that comes from like just just focusing on like the profiling and the dehumanization, because like at the same time, while it takes so much, and I appreciate what comes with the media and showing like the connection that comes with like showing like what you have in common and what comes from this could be you, it you shouldn't have to, because in my blackness and who I am, you may not be autistic, you may not be black, my family may not look like yours. And because we look different, because we do not identify the same way, because you may not have tics, because you may not have motor disinhibition, because you may not process in the same way, because you may not have had headphones, because you may not listen to the same music. It should not take all of that for you to understand that I deserve to live, that Max deserves to live, that you deserve not to be hit, that you deserve not to be restrained. And so certain media too, that the way that we digest certain media and we identify with certain media, and that we identify with certain cultures and along those lines, it shouldn't require that. And while it's beautiful, at the same time, it just hurts that it requires that. And at the same time, it can also form even stronger boundaries at the step, people to form up those walls. And while people who will say that because you're pointing, drawing attention to that you are being more divisive. And though you're not, it's more of, it's drawing attention to the very thing that they're scared of, that in that fear, that they hate it, that they hate that authority, that they understand that they have that confusion, that they don't identify it, that they too understand that there's something wrong there, that they've been isolated from it, that they've been told that they're not supposed to like this. So instead of asking the questions, instead of actually sitting down and slowing down and saying, what is wrong here? Why is this triggering me? Why is this triggering me to want to cause harm? Why is this causing me to pass down that generational trauma and pain that I've always been told to enact, that they continue to cause that same harm? And it's causing us to keep causing things like that is killing us, that has caused things like to hurt, that caused Max to be murdered. And it's so painful, and I hate it, and I fear for my kids every single day, and I fear for my people, and so many of us who deserve to be here now. Every single day they're gone. And I, as much as I love and appreciate and see myself in watching media such as Two Distant Strangers, it also breaks my heart that it's required. And I also understand why it is so triggering for people. But it also helps me understand just how much more work there is to put into. And I appreciate that you're willing to put in that work.
Absolutely. I mean, you everything you said is spot on, and um, you know, it's you have to examine why someone would want someone like Max to be a foot taller and 40 pounds heavier, and it's to soften the reality of what you've actually done, that you harmed a child. You harmed a child, and you want that child to appear as adult like as possible, to detract from the reality of what we're doing on a daily basis to autistic people and people of color and all over this country. And it's not until we deal with that reality that things like this will stop happening. It's not until we can create a system where you don't have to pretend that your victims are bigger than what they actually are, so that you can get away with murdering them. It's up to us, and it's up to creating art and things that connect with people, that can convey those messages, that can create that change. And no one should have to go through what you went through losing your son. And it's there are no words that can express the gravity of how wrong and misguided and unfortunate, that situation is. And you deserve every piece of, opportunity, and every piece of anything that can be offered to you to make this something that never happens again. And if the best thing I can do is tell stories and create art that inspires change with people like Zaria, like I will do, and doing things like this, I will do everything I can.
Yeah. I also, speaking on the subject of dehumanization, it's so tragic and devastating to think that the reason, well, I'll say one of the reasons that they murdered Max, was the dehumanization. They didn't see him as worthy of what everyone deserves: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And then after, they took his oh, sorry, I'm hearing the echo, and I was like, oh, am I interrupting someone? And then after was a further dehumanization of a child. I'm at a loss for words. It's just so unfortunate. And I think that we have to recognize in ourselves what part of whoever is, was a part of this terrible incident, what inside. It's just so much introspection that has to take place. And so I'm grateful, as Trayvon said, to be able to talk about it here, or reach out to my representatives, or participate in art that means something, that says something, so that people can start having that introspection. It's as Trayvon said, just there are no words.
And I
And,
think oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to add that, it's so ironic that, like, last night, Zari and I were talking about, anger and why someone like me, who you can't tell on the Zoom, is 6'7", and why someone my size, who 280 pounds plus, can't walk around the world being angry or getting angry or expressing anger, which is a natural emotion. Because for someone like me, I immediately become a threat if I express any level of anger whatsoever. If I even seem upset in a public space, what it's viewed as is something very different than what it might actually be, and then that turns into violence that could potentially happen to me because of what someone perceives me to be based on what I look like or what I appear to be behaving like. And we've seen that happen so many times where, you know, Black women can't express their emotions because uh, it's immediately deemed that they're upset and angry and sassy, and you can't work with them. And someone like me, I have to walk around with a smile, ready to go at any given moment to let people know I'm not a threat. I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not a danger to anyone. And it's for those reasons why I think the legislation that you guys are proposing is so important. It's so important that, as an adult, it's one thing, but there should be a baseline level of humanity that we reserve for our children, period.
Yes.
There should just be a baseline level of humanity that we reserve for our children, period. There are so many things we know are unacceptable when it comes to children, and restraining them and causing harm because you don't understand what they're going through has to be top of that list.
Yeah, and it's a societal lack of understanding and a misrepresentation, and unfortunately, in Max's case, that was fatal. So the violent use of restraint is as much of a problem for autistic people as it is for people of color, and unfortunately the most dangerous for people of color who are autistic.
That's exactly right. And just want to quickly throw out, we had some people who couldn't come at the last minute because of various things, and it's flu and COVID and strep season. So no one needs to leave. Everyone is welcome to stay. We had some time slots that we can now abandon because everyone's here. And also welcome Zoe and Jules. And Stacia, I feel like you probably have a lot to say right now, but no pressure. But if you do, you'll have to unmute yourself.
You told me that I shouldn't watch that movie, but I feel like I have to now that I've heard these two people. These are very incredible people, and so I'm gonna try to watch it. Tara told me that would be too upsetting for me, but I'm just so blown away by your empathy and your humanity, and I have to see it now. I'll just get a whole bunch of tissues and I'll be fine. But one of the things that allows this to happen, that I think that the cameras that police are wearing now are part of the reason that this became such a movement, that people got upset about it, because if you can't see it happening, or there's no record of it happening, then it doesn't exist, basically. And so when we all saw what happened to George Floyd, it mobilized people to get upset about it. And part of the problem with things like Max is that there's no camera that is ever going to capture what happened to him. The schools that kids like Max are sent to are not very regulated, and teacher and moms and people cannot come into them just at will. I couldn't even go on field trips with him because that wasn't allowed either. So what makes me, and that's sort of, for me, that's the biggest thing, is these schools that autistic people are being sent to are black holes where you can basically do anything to kids. And that's something that's horrific to me. It wasn't explained to me as a parent and what these schools were like. And it's something that I want to help change when I get a little bit better and through some of the legal stuff that we're going through now. But it's a huge problem that these kids are sent to these schools that are for profit, for one thing, but also just black holes of not being able to see into them. The public can't see into them. The parents can't see into them. And when you have darkness like that, bad things are going to happen. And so I don't know why I brought that up right now, but that's something I think about a lot.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to, I understand if you have to go, Trayvon and Zaria, but you're very welcome to stay too, as long as you want, for the whole thing if you want. But I did want to ask one more thing that I'm sure you have seen every single time we've had a tragedy like this, that comes up also in every IEP meeting that we attend. And we'll talk to Jules in a minute about this too, is people say, why didn't they just comply? Why do you think compliance is so important? Or why can't people just comply?
I think, oh,
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that it's such a form of victim blaming. And, I just, when people say that, I wonder if they think that the penalty for not complying is the death penalty. And if it's not the death penalty, then maybe we should look elsewhere for the problem. So I laugh to keep from crying about that, because it's so devastating that is, wielded as an excuse for something that's inexcusable. There is no excuse for it. There is an incredible lack of understanding and of the autistic community specifically, and the communities of people of color. And really, we just need a better language. If you want people to comply, they have to understand what you're asking of them. And the only way they're going to understand what you're asking of them is if you speak their language. So it's just this, circle, that kind of snake that eats its own tail. And
I think, I'm sorry, are you done? I didn't want to cut you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that I do have to run to a script meeting for another project, but I want to leave you guys with something, connected to what Zari is explaining, which is, why is complying or not complying a death sentence for people? And I think to give a mini history lesson, you have to examine the history of authority in this country, right? You go back to the beginning, and what is the history of authority in this country? It's disobedience equals death, right? It's the beginning of authority in this country is white dominance over black bodies, right? It's enslavement of black people, right? And you think, and you look at what is the origin of policing in America, right? It's slave patrols that, after the disbanding of slavery, became our police departments, right? So the history, the fruit of the poisonous tree for authority in this country comes from slavery, slave patrols who became police departments, right? So now you're asking people who had permission to murder people for disobedience to now follow rules, right? And now you're asking them to follow basic rules of humanity for people they don't view as human. And that trickles down historically through the processes and the creation of the various forms of laws and authority in this country as it pertains to what is policing, what is giving a teacher permission to do to a student within the bounds of a particular school or the bounds of a particular place that they might inhabit. And then what you end up getting is people who believe, if you put me in charge, my authority is exactly what should be followed. And if you do not comply with my authority, I have the right to do something to you for it. And oftentimes now that manifests itself as murder, whether it be accidental or whether it be intentional. There is a long line of history connected to the authority and what it means to have authority in this country that are causing people to be murdered daily. And until we examine and deconstruct that in a way that completely gives us the ability to create a new system, to create a new way of thinking about what it means to be in charge of children, what it means to be in charge of people who are still learning to be people, then you end up with situations like what happened to Max. And so it's understanding these things and knowing that this is not a surface level problem. This goes so deep. And until we dig up those roots and dig deep to pull those roots out and find a new tree to plant, find new ideas, new ways of doing things to plant so that we can manifest much more beautiful and peaceful and loving ways of caring for each other, then you get what we have now. And so I think once we've decided we can do that, this will all change. And so I just want to leave everyone with that. I'm sorry that I have to run, but I thank you so much for having me. And please, if you need anything from me, feel free to reach out going forward. I'm very easy to find. I think you guys all have my information.
Trayvon, one more thing before you go. Pretty much the entire time you were talking, in the back of my head was the scene from the pop-up scenes from Don't Be a Message, where it's like, message. Like, so thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And Stacia, God bless you. I send you all the love in the world. I honor your strength and I honor your worthiness and I honor you in doing this and standing up for Max and standing up for all the Maxes out there whose names we may never know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both so much for
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you everyone who's on this call. Just before I leave, Max deserved a safer world, and like Trayvon said, the Maxes of the world deserve a safer world. We all deserve a safer world with more understanding and more empathy and more curiosity. So thank you so much for having me. And I am, maybe I'm not as easy to find as Trayvon, but if you can find Trayvon, oftentimes you can find me. So thank you so much.
We're going to find
Thank
you. Don't
you.
worry.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. And Kate, I will segue to you to introduce Jules.
Oh, hi. Jules, thank you for coming and being with us. I'm wondering whether you'd like to introduce yourself, because I really suck at introductions for me, so I'm probably not going to be much better at it for people and do you justice.
Sure, thank you. I'm Jules Edwards. I am an autistic advocate and I'm a parent of autistic children. I'm sorry, am I projecting my voice enough?
You sound great.
Yeah,
good. And my emotional support cat knocked on the door as this meeting began. As she tends to do, she can tell when I'm like in an emotional meeting and she'll come and cuddle up. She's on my lap right now. And she was doing the thing that cats do where they try to show their behind on camera, but I wouldn't let her. So I'm sorry, I had to lighten it up a little bit because I'm
regulatory taps. That's what we need.
I tend to joke when I'm a little bit emotional. So I'm a writer. I write the blog Autistic Typing. I have a book coming out soon. And I do a lot of like on the ground policy work as well. I'm the chairperson for the Minnesota Senate Autism Council. And I've done a LEND fellowship through, it's a U.S. program through the university. It doesn't matter. It's a lot of universities that matter.
Friends are awesome.
Yeah, I do stuff. I like to do cool stuff with cool people. I'm really moved to do things that make an impact because my children, they're at really high risk of terrible things that happen to autistic people. And I would like them to be safe just as I would like all autistic children to be safe, like Max. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned your book. So your book's coming out and it's I Will Die on This Hill, Autistic Adults, Autism Parents and the Children Who Deserve a Better World. And you wrote that with Megan Ashburn, right?
Yes.
So there's a chapter in your book when you talk about how your son's school would always call you about your son while you're at work. And you'd have to leave and go to the school. And one day they called you because he was standing on a chair. You okay if I read out an excerpt about that?
Sure.
Okay, so it's what happened when you walked into the dean's office. You write, I took off my boots, stepped carefully onto the chair and turned to face Jonathan. He covered his mouth with both hands. Oh, there's a bit missing in my adminning. So you got this call, right? Saying that your son had been standing on a chair and that was the crime he'd committed. And you were like, well, he must not be on the chair right now because you're calling me, so he must be in your office. So you kind of tramped over from your office to get there, which wasn't far away, right? And you get there, and a little grin at him because this is not a new scenario, right, where you've turned up at school because you've had a call. And you take off your boots and you get on the chair and you turn to face him, and he's in the dean's office at this point. And he covered his mouth with both hands and his shoulders shook with giggles. What am I doing? I asked him, pretending to be confused. You're standing on the chair, he guffawed. Is this what I'm supposed to do with a chair? I asked. Giggles escape between his hands as he replies, no. Okay, I smiled and I stepped down, put my boots back on and left. I didn't look or speak to the dean at this time. I didn't have anything nice to say. As I walked back to work, I wondered why they called me. I wondered why they picked on my son for the most petty reasons. I wished the other adults could be helpful. I wished other adults knew how to communicate with my son in a way that de-escalated conflict, built relationships, and helped him. The power struggles instigated by adults with the attitude that children should comply because I said so only made things harder. So I think you said that your son had like 169 referrals. Why do you think these power struggles that result in those hundreds of behavior referrals and restraints and parent calls happen, especially to autistic kids, and even more to Black and brown autistic kids, and then follow up? Like, what's the follow up for that?
Why does it happen? I wish that I knew. All I have is speculation. When we think about the dynamics of abuse within an abusive relationship, we understand that it's based on power and control. So if we can transfer that to systems, it's based on power and control of people within systems. And who doesn't have power? It is the children who are autistic. The children in general don't have very much power. But when children have disabilities, when children are Black, Indigenous, people of color, Asian, in systems that were designed to essentially create factory workers. That was, the original intent of schools was to create little factory workers. You sit here, you learn your arithmetic so that you can do the calculations to create the widgets in the factory. That was the purpose. And the teachers want their children to be able to, I shouldn't even say teachers. Oftentimes it's the administrators and the policymakers who make the rules about production standards. And that's what these standardized testing is all about. That's what classroom management is all about. It's about these measurement metrics that we set for you without ever setting a single foot in your classroom. So they aren't taught the creative problem solving. They aren't taught to build relationships with these children in creative ways. They aren't taught that a kid who's standing on a chair he knows if he's supposed to be standing on a chair or not. And the teachers and the paras are worried about liability, or what if the principal steps in the class, or whatever else, like what if they get hurt and then I don't have somebody to cover, and all of this stuff. And I understand that those are concerns, but those concerns shouldn't exist because their classroom sizes are too big and all this stuff, but they want to control the children. And they don't get taught to stand on a chair to make the kid laugh and be like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. They aren't taught that when you have a classroom full of rammy children and you're like, this is too much for me. If you have a helium balloon and you suck out that helium and you read them a book, guess what happens? Those rammy children are enthralled because their teacher just read a book about a mouse in a squeaky little voice. And it's hilarious, and they're tuned in and they're engaged and they're excited and they want to be there and they want to learn. But they aren't taught to be creative like that.
Yeah. And then in turn, I guess the children aren't taught creative solutions to problems, and then it just gets passed down. I mean, I guess what really struck me about that with your son was that the crisis was over. The crisis was not a crisis. It was a kid on a chair, let's be clear. But it was over by the time they called you. The school escalated that. That wasn't about learning anything. That was about power and control.
Mm-hmm. Can I interject something real quick?
Yeah.
One thing I've really learned, I did not know about your book, but now I know I have to read it. I've learned more about you, Jules, and I really respect the heck out of you. And one thing I've been reading up about, like teaching abolition on many different levels. And so when it comes to like abolition, when it comes to teachers, I've learned that a lot of the times teachers don't really see themselves as a part of the problem at all. They don't see themselves as an influence in that manner. They don't see themselves as a part of the problem one way or another, as that kind of responsibility. That they don't see themselves as that they're a part of this that establishment. That they're just there to teach the kids, and that if they're not listening, that's the child's fault. They don't see themselves as a part of the problem. That if the child is not complying, that's the child's fault, not actually looking inward. It's like, well, if the child's not complying, maybe I should look at, it's like, well, why do they need to comply with this? What that does that comply mean? Maybe something that I can work on. Or maybe if the child is acting a certain way, it's something I need to work on, or maybe I'm harming the child. They don't look at themselves as any part of the system whatsoever at all. And I find that's a big part of the problem, and it also makes it really hard to talk to them about really anything, about taking any kind of accountability in it, because they don't see themselves in it, which also seems kind of hard to wrap, I'd say, my head around it, especially as neurodivergent people, because how do you not see yourself as a part of this when you're a teacher in this school? How do you not see yourself as a part of the system when you're the teacher, when you're my child's teacher? So how do you not see yourself as a part of this overarching problem? How do you not see yourself as the problem when you're the teacher who was upset at my child for not listening to you? So, yeah, but go on.
Exactly. Thank you, Jude. Yes. And this is not an original idea, but I read it online somewhere that teachers can be considered the police of children. They have the same power dynamics of children. And I kind of want to backtrack. A couple of times George Floyd was mentioned, and I kind of want to touch on that briefly. I live in Minnesota. I live less than half an hour away from where George Floyd was murdered, and I have disabled children, disabled Afro-Indigenous children. My eldest is 6 feet tall, bigger than George Floyd probably, in terms of like total body size. And if he was in that position, he would not be able to comply. And something that gets missed a lot when we talk about George Floyd is that George Floyd was a disabled Black man. He had PTSD. He was claustrophobic. He was advocating for himself in that moment. But he was not allowed to be disabled. He was not allowed to advocate for himself. When he tried to protect his so-called rights, he was punished for that. And that we see that over and over and over again for disabled people, is self-advocacy is seen as non-compliance. And that can't be how we perceive our children, because we need to teach them how to set and enforce boundaries for their bodies. We need to teach them how to say, I am overstimulated and I need a break. I can't handle physical touch right now. Please leave me alone. I need some quiet time. I need some activity. If kids can't advocate for themselves like that, and they're pushed into this escalating pattern of power and control, it ends in tragedy. Math should be a lot.
It's like I think the little things get lost. So I guess an example would be my kids go to in the UK. It's really normal to wear uniforms and they have to wear a blazer. They're not allowed to take their blazer off without the permission of a teacher. So they cannot regulate their own body temperature. If they're like, oh, I'm hot, I need to take my jumper off, which is a real, if you're autistic and you struggle with interoception, just noticing that you're hot and knowing that you can do a thing about it is like win. You need that. That's a key skill. And then you have someone telling you, no, you don't have my permission to regulate your temperature. And that's just like an everyday, that's the wallpaper. That's not, but like if that's the baseline for how we're honoring people's bodies, autistic or not.
Absolutely. When I'm overheated, I want to rip my skin off and stomp on the sky. Like, That's a real thing. It's a real sensory need. And when we consider that skin is our body's largest organ,
Mhm.
we need our skin to be like reasonably comfortable in
Right.
terms of sensory needs.
Stacia, I showed you that excerpt from Jules' book yesterday, and I want to bring up the first. When I read that in the book, I didn't. My mind was so confused about should I stand up and cheer or should I break down and cry, and I did a little of both because that scene was beautiful. It's a lot, it's a lot how I raised my kid, and I noticed I see so much of Stacia in that scene too. And immediately Stacia said, I love this woman. And that teachers and people who were like that with Max, and when you were a paraprofessional, you were like that with kids. And one of the first things you ever said to me when I asked you, what do you wish people knew? Or what needs to be different? And you said, it shouldn't be so radical for people to just be nice to children. And that's, in Jules' book, that's what she's opining, that same thing. And we've shown Bad Guy Pants and the video, and I told you, like, I immediately knew so much about you from your laughter at that and the atmosphere in your home, but also there were child drawings all over your walls, not pinned up paper, like actually on the physical walls. And that is the kind of home that I have. And my child's toddler drawings are still on some furniture in my house that I could clean off, but I like them. Some of them I cleaned and some of them I left. But Stacia, did you have anything that you wanted to say right now? No pressure.
No, it's uncomfortable for me to be praised, so I'm trying to shake that off. I think, it's just such a complicated problem that we're talking about, and I keep on just cycling to all the different things that need to be changed. And also, I can't believe that your kids can't take their sweaters off, because that's just horrible.
Well,
And
we tell them to just
do it. Yeah.
Consequences.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say. I'm a little bit overwhelmed by how many cool people there are in this thing, and I'm trying to just process all of that. But I think everybody should buy her book, because she sounds like just an amazing writer, an amazing person. And the more people that like that get connected to all the parents like I was, the less people like Max are going to have. Because I was not very educated about the autistic world and the way that schools worked and all this kind of thing. And the more knowledge that you have and the more smart people that we have, like Jules, who are able to network and do things in the world like that, the better the world will be for all of our kids. And we just need to be active, and we need to find each other, and we need to be brave and to do stuff, because it's just terrifying. It terrifies me at night to think about. All my kids are out of school now, but it keeps me up at night that there's still kids, like Max. And anybody that's working to help make that not the case is just a hero to me. So thank you. Everybody I see right here is doing that. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Stacia. And I also want to thank you for your vulnerability, because I know it is not easy to come here, and I'm not trying to make it uncomfortable for you because you just said you don't like praise, but I just want to say thank you for sharing Max's story because it's important, and I want other parents to know or to learn from you about Max and about how he should have been treated and how we should advocate for all of our children to be treated. I try not to talk about my own children's school trauma, but they've experienced restraint and things like that. And it is infuriating as a parent. It is heartbreaking as a parent. And I ended up pulling my kids out of public school to homeschool because I felt like that was the only safe option for them. But I just want to thank you for sharing Max's memory with us.
I want to talk a little bit with all of you about compliance, and we've touched on this. And Jules, you said, your son could not comply, and I told you too that was me, and that's a reason that Max's story and stories related to Judge Rotenberg Center, they just kill me because I also could not comply. And in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, I only have the fight gear. When I get in that claustrophobic, I need people to stop touching me. I panic so much that, and I have been that person who, I feel very surprised that I'm alive currently. But because I am, I can't stop trying to make sure that people quit pushing for compliance the way that they do, and wish that people would stop asking, why didn't they just comply? Because it's not possible. It is not. It's like saying, stand in the middle of this fire and don't try to get out of it. That is exactly the feeling. It's like you couldn't put someone in a fire and expect them to just stand still, but that's what happens to my nervous system and other people's. We can't. I mean, some people can. Some people can freeze and fawn and keep their facilities in check, but some of us just are so dysregulated by that we just go into that deep brain instinctual state of like, I have to get away, I can't comply. And so, yes, Stacia, did you want to? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry. Anybody want to tackle that or talk?
I do. I'm not sure what I missed while I went to the bathroom and then checked on my kids, but yes, especially I feel like I've understood, but especially like what I've talked to you about recently, Tara, I understand now more than ever. Like right now I'm going through a very bad autoimmune response. And so like when you said it's like saying like stand in the middle of a fire and not get out, or honestly it feels like stand for me like the response when I'm having a flare-up, be set on fire and then not yell out in pain. Like literally it's like my kids can wake me up, or like an alarm can wake me up and it'll dysregulate my body so bad I scream out in pain because it feels like my skin is on fire and I can't control myself. Cannot. No way. I didn't make myself. I didn't force myself to do it. My body automatically did that. And then punishing someone for crying out in pain because their body automatically had that response. And so where do you go? You're literally, because you cannot understand why somebody else's body is reacting in that way. You cannot understand why somebody else's humanity is not reacting in a way that yours is not. And so to hold somebody else's humanity in a way is not reacting in ways that, so also holding other disabled people in a way, and it's like, well, you understand that you're disabled. So, but there's other disabled people whose body does not react in the same way. So we're all different. Our humanity is different. And so to expect us all to react in the same way, that, and expect us to be able to comply instead of just sitting there, and it's like, why are you expecting this child to have to do what you want them to do, force them to do what you want them to do, and you'll hurt them if they want you to? Why do you think it's justified to hurt a baby? My baby will always be my baby, no matter how old they are. That is my baby. So I've had to sit and I've had to grapple that. Why am I triggered enough that I want to hurt my baby? And I've had to sit there and sit with that. So why do you want to hurt somebody else's baby? Why are you so angry? Why are you? And that does, and somebody's commented that a lot of that it is like impulsive. It is like adrenaline fueled. So it's time for you to calm down. If you're in that authoritative role where you're supposed to be taking care of somebody else's child, then it's time for you to regulate yourself. It's time for you to calm down. And so you can, it's like, if that child is not doing what you need them to do, then why don't you put on your thinking cap and you sit down, and it's like, okay, then what do I need to do? Because if you want to pass around this failure to comply and shit, then let's put that failure on yourself. My failure to break down what I needed to do to get this child to be okay. My failure to do what I needed to do. That fail our children. Our children never failed us. Our failure to let our children be children. That's what has been failed. But our children cannot fail us. Our babies cannot fail us. And I'm so tired of that. It's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking to watch that trauma to be passed down because you were failed as a child too. Because you were. And it's so hard to accept that your parents abused you too. That your grandparents abused you too. That your society abused you too. And that might be hard to admit. It might be scary to admit. But it'll help you make sense of this world in yourself, so that you're not hurting more people, and that we're not dying anymore, that you're not killing other people, you're not justifying the deaths, that you're not painting this big scary picture of somebody's baby. Everybody's somebody's baby, but Max was Stacia's baby, and I'm saying Max deserved to be here. He deserved to bask in this joy. This didn't deserve to be some kind of memoriam. This deserved to be like Max Day. This deserved to be like, guess what, Max? We're here to talk about you and all of your accomplishments and all the things that you do. This didn't deserve to be talking about Max's death. This deserved to be us here talking about just Max's accomplishment and how amazing Max is. And Max is amazing regardless. But Max deserves to be here, and everybody, I'm sorry. But so many people who have been robbed from us. Max was robbed from us. Max was taken from Stacia. I'm so sorry they took him from you, and they robbed him from you. And it needs to stop. So they need to slow down, and they need to sit with themselves. And I know it is so hard to sit with yourself and to see all of the harm that you have caused to your own self, to your child, that has been caused to you. But it is necessary so that you don't keep doing it. Would you rather more people die and you pass that down, or would you rather stop that butt? Would you rather I'm sorry, I'm getting dysregulated. But would you rather more people die? Would you rather more people like Max die? Or is that what people would rather? That people like Max die? People that they do not identify with? Would you rather more death in general? Or would you rather actual what you're going as a job for, that you're a caretaker and that you're a teacher and that you're actually giving some kind of legacy? Because Max's legacy deserves to be of love and care and light and joy that you said, Stacia. It deserves not to be just about his death, but about just all of the things that he loved and who he was.
And we have a hashtag that we hope everyone will bring back. It's hashtag Shine on Max. And this is a perfect time to bring that up. And also to bring Zoe in. If you're here, Zoe, Zoe is having, Zoe's daughter is sick, and so she is coming and going as she can. Are you here, Zoe?
I am here for
Oh, good.
the moment. Yes, sorry, I have a poorly one who is currently downstairs with my mum, but she's struggling some, so I'm on presently, but I may have to jump off again. Hi, Stacia. This is, unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch everything that everybody has been saying throughout the webinar. I did catch some of Trayvon and the discussions as far as the dehumanization of the autistic population and people with disabilities. And
Zoe, you're with iCars.
I'm with iCars, yes. So
And you and I met shortly
met
after
through
Max
Stacia. So
was killed,
yes,
and you were planning a vigil.
that's correct. So Max passed away, and I reached out to Stacia to see if she would be willing for us to put together an international vigil for Max in memory of him and to celebrate his life. And you and I had met shortly before, Tara, me reaching out to Stacia. And then iCars and NeuroClastic came together and were joined by advocates internationally and supporters back in 2019 for the Shine on Max vigil. So that's how the three of us are connected. I also am trying not to get upset. Max is somebody I'm extremely connected to, and Stacia. So this is hard, but I'm here because I have to be. I'm willed to be here, I think, by Max, who says you better get on and you better speak and make people aware of what it is that's happening within the autistic community and those who attend schools and within institutions.
Zoe, can you tell people what iCars is and what the acronym stands for?
We are the International Coalition Against Restraint and Seclusion, and we are a parent-led international advocacy group who work on trying to pass legislation to prevent harm to children and to legislate the elimination of restraint and seclusion globally. So we partner with people who are working on legislation and help promote them with that. We join in coalition with people who are working on legislation. We work ourselves on legislation in different territories and help disseminate information and support anyone and everyone we can, really, who's trying to bring an end to this practice being used primarily in schools, but we seem to have diversified out of that a bit more of recent and have joined together with other advocates who are working on removing this from any institution. So iCars are proud to collaborate with all of the advocates who are working on the SICA legislation on a federal level, which is the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act. And then other advocates throughout the country who are trying to work on a state level to eliminate restraint and seclusion across multiple settings. So that's who we are.
I talk to Zoe all the time, almost every day. Zoe calls me even though I hate phones. And but Max is with Zoe every day, everywhere she goes. It never leaves Zoe's mind. And Uh, yeah. Zoe, can you tell us a little bit? Because you not only do you know all the statistics, but you also have aggregated a lot of your own research. Can you tell us who is being restrained the most often in schools? And if you have specific statistics, you probably do.
Um, I do have all of those, but not at hand immediately because of has been going on in the background with Madeline. But I can tell you, you are aware at NeuroClastic, and people who follow ICARS are aware that we actually embarked on a case study, data gathering across the UK last year. So I can use the data we've got out of the UK, which is very similar, I believe, to data within the United States. And we deep dived into over 550 individual cases of children who were restrained and secluded in schools across the UK. And 81% of those children were autistic. So this is definitely something that is happening disproportionately to neurodivergent children. It is definitely something which is being disproportionately used against children of colour. And without a clear definition of last resort, it appears to be free game. We joined with you, Tara, at NeuroClastic and with Unsilenced to release what we believe the definition of last resort should be last year in 2022. There is no legal definition of last resort. And so from the case studies, which we have over 700 of them now, which were gathered in 2021, 2022, we have found that restraint and seclusion is being egregiously used. Some children are subjected daily for months and years at a time for situations that are clearly not last resort. So autistic children being placed in restraint and being secluded because they had a bad choice in friends, being restrained.
Or they spit, or they threw
Or
a
they
sandwich.
We didn't have anybody spitting or throwing sandwiches, but we did have teachers across England who gave the reason that the child liked it. It was for
Yeah.
the child's own good. And one
It
head
calms them
teacher
down,
who
some people
that
said.
the young autistic girl was in need of it because she was, I quote, feral. And so the perception of neurodivergent children by the people who are there to care and educate them, I think, needs to be approached. It needs to be exposed. We need to move away from these behavioural models of compliance and have neurodivergent experts at federal and local government levels devising educational systems which are neurodivergent affirming, move away from the behaviour and compliance model. And as I have said to you many a times, Tara, you can't give a blind child a book and insist that they read. You cannot punish neurodivergency out of a child by holding them to the floor or locking them in the room. You would imagine that if this was a practice that worked after being held down 1 or 2 times, if children could help their reaction, they would stop. So the fact that this has to be used repeatedly shows that this is not something that works.
Yes, and we have research that shows that it gets worse after instances of restraint. Of course it does. That's not there. We don't need research to understand why it gets worse. You've traumatized someone. Trauma changes your brain permanently. And I think all of us on this panel can tell you from firsthand experience what it's like to live with PTSD and trauma, and you are not ever the same. And you cannot go back in time to where your brain and body are capable of staying regulated after these trauma triggers keep coming back. And so our children are being provoked unnecessarily, and people are using restraint because they're looking for surrender. That's what they want. They want us to dissociate so hard that we check out of our own brains and we go on autopilot and just comply with everything so that we blend into the background. And I say we, as an adult, because I can't separate my own self from, I have experienced this. I know what this is like, and we can't do this to children. We have to support this legislation, but also NeuroClastic knows that bottom-up activism works. And that's what I would like to talk about a little bit for just a second, and get other people here to chime in. We have used bottom-up activism the entire time that we have been an org. We're unpaid activists here, and we don't do things like most people. We're not lobbyists. We build community, and we work from the grassroots, ground level, and we change public opinion so that you all will help us by using your voice and your platform and your passion to challenge the media when they dehumanize people, when they run these stories. And that's what Shine on Max was. It was not just to bring awareness to the fact that this happened, but to bring awareness to the fact that this was a complicated, brilliant, beautiful, fun, funny, talented, fully thinking and human person. And the media is not going to erase his entire life and identity and reduce him to this last minute, this power struggle that was just victimhood at the hands of abusive teachers who murdered him. We are going to make sure the world does not forget his humanity. And also, this is not just about Max. Shine on Max is about everyone that the world tries to erase and just filter their entire identity down to this moment of struggle. So we are asking you to help us in this bottom-up activism. We want you to keep Max's story alive, his humanity. Max loved rocks and stones, and so that is something that when you find a cool rock, take a picture of it and put it on social media and hashtag it Shine on Max. That's something that we are going to start doing at NeuroClastic too. And we have some rocks to give away, actually. We can't wait to do that with you all. Well, we want you to keep his story alive and help us with this. That's our bottom-up activism, because we need the public in general en masse to say, we're not okay with this. You have to do better. To the media outlets who want to say, this was a giant, 6'4" refrigerator size, out of control human. No, it wasn't. Cornelius Frederick threw a sandwich. He was a teenager in a residential facility. And we look at the things from Judge Rotenberg Center, the things that children are being restrained and shocked for. We've seen the videos of Andre McComas. He wouldn't take his jacket off. And they strapped him down in a 4-point mechanical prone restraint and shocked him. And we've seen this because he wouldn't take his jacket off. And we can do better. we can do better. These are human beings. And so we want you all to help us with that. Stacia, what can people do to help support you and your family and to help you bring the change that you want to see happen?
I guess what I would want for people to do is to protect their kid. There's nothing that anybody can do for Max anymore. So what we can do is we can protect other kids like that. And the kids, what you need to do is you need to be strong and you need to ask a lot of questions to the educators in your life and to the administrators at your schools and stuff, and to really sort of educate yourself more about what actually happens to kids in classrooms. If you can see your kid's classroom, that's great. But if you can't, you should be suspicious that something is going on there that is, not good. And especially if your kid is not capable of telling you. You need to ask a lot of questions, and you need to join people like Zoe and like Jules and like Tara, who are out in the world doing things. Join those groups and learn more. And if you have the energy, become fabulous like they are, so that you can help protect all of our kids. Because I think only together are we ever going to really make these things stop. So that's what I would advise. And I thank you for this wonderful pep talk, because I'm going into a criminal trial where there's going to be a lot of probably what I'm told is victim blaming and and things that we've talked about here. And it's just made me stronger to hear everybody defending Max and just refusing to accept other people's ideas of what he was like. That's huge for me. So thanks.
And we won't be silent when we hear Max spoken about in those terms. That's what we can do for Max.
Yeah, we're not going to let that happen. Stacia.
I'm not a quiet person by any means. And when I hear people, when they talk mean about me, that is usually when I'm silent. I get very, I don't like that, I don't know. But other people, especially somebody's kids, that is when I get very belligerent and very angry. That's when, they need to call the police. Can someone please go over there? And it's like, yes, I'll give you a reason to call the police. Like, better try. So yes, like I stand with you, and if I hear someone saying some things, they will know my name, and they will definitely remember Max's name, because that's all they're going to hear. Like I will make sure that they will, if they ever, they will always associate, if they ever think about saying anything mean about your baby ever again, that they will feel pain.
Yeah, we're not going to let that happen.
Yep.
Our whole community, you have needed your community this whole time, and we're here. Like, our audience right now is letting you know, and a lot of people can't be on this stream right this minute, but we're not going to let that happen.
There are a lot of people who support you and support Max. There really are. And that iCars won't allow anybody to say anything horrendous about Max or victim blame him. We've stood alongside you right from the beginning. Max he is a light. I don't even like how he's spoken about in past tense. He is a light. He's a present light. He guides all of us. And he is important. and he's never going to be forgotten. And I think that anybody who wants to engage in victim blaming only shows their own arrogance on the subject, and their lack of education and knowledge to be able to blame an autistic child who was sent to school to be educated and to elevate his future, and instead they eliminated it from him. So that's certainly not going to happen. And we're with you, Stacia, through everything, and the community and all of the parents globally who know of what's happened. So you're not alone, absolutely not alone, and nobody will be leaving you.
Anybody? I think we are about ready to wrap up. Is there anybody who has any closing thoughts, or just thank you to our audience too, for consistently helping us. We try to. We can't take every advocacy case that comes to us because we're a small team of disabled people ourselves, but we have a giant community, and that's you all. And so when we try to take the biggest case that we think that we can have, that's within our sphere of influence, and we rely on you, and you have helped us to do things that everybody said was never going to be possible, that no one has ever done before, like getting pardons for people, innocent people who were in prison for being disabled. And we're very close to stopping the shock at this point, and you all continue to be so amazing and supportive. So thank you to everyone in the audience who stands and fights with us. Everybody, please buy Jules' book, I Will Die on This Hill. I read over half of it in like 2 hours because I just could not stop. I had so much stuff to do, but I just lost the rest of the world. It's amazing. So.
Well, and the sole purpose is we want the world to be at a better place for autistic kids, our own kids and future generations, because we don't want another Max. So thank you.
Okay, well, I think that we are ready to close out. Stacia, did you have anything else, or are you?
No, I'm just laughing at us all crying. It's the only thing you can do. But I thank you all for your time very much. Max would have loved to be the center of all of these people's attention. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about him.
Yeah, let's make Max famous.
Again.
Yes. Yeah. And also, Stacia, can you show the bad guy pants? I feel like it's very important. Yeah, the bad guy pants.
Bad guy pants. These are my bad guy pants. They have where does the camera go? Okay, can you see them? Mm-hmm. How flexible do you think I am, Tara? Like, there they are. Those are the pants.
Oh yeah, you're pretty that's that bendy thing that we have.
Yeah, we both have it. Yeah, there's so many. There's like, yeah. Well, on that note, I'm gonna go cry some more.
Okay, bye everybody. Put your bad guy pants on. #ShineOnMax. Help us keep this story alive, and stay tuned into NeuroClastic. We will post about this regularly and let you know what we need when we know what we need. Okay, take care everybody. Be safe.